Hello, we are here with Babies and Basilisks. Can y'all introduce yourselves and your team and tell us why Babies and Basilisks?
I'm Edward Shaddock.
I'm Vincent Miller. So, we kind of started out with just the idea of creating an asymmetric VR party game. So that means that we wanted to have a VR player doing one thing, and then they were going to be interacting with a few other players, probably sitting on a couch with gamepads doing something else. And one idea we had when we were thinking about that concept was that the VR player could be building a level that the other players have to navigate through. And it just kind of, it just flowed into having the VR player being a kid playing with toys. And that's kind of how the name Babies and Basilisks was born, because it kind of imitates the structure of a D&D campaign, where you have a dungeon master building a campaign for other players.
It's an infant. Yeah, I mean, what I've seen of it is pretty hilarious looking. It looks like a lot of fun. Were you guys kind of looking at, with the minigame approach, kind of something like, it feels almost like a cross between VR D&D and Mario Party. Can you talk a little bit about the minigames, about the people who are playing with the controllers, what their experience is like?
So what we were trying to go with was a baby playing with their toys. Like what it would be like for a person to suddenly become a toy and have to survive a maze built by a giant baby and get out alive. So based on the D&D campaign sort of thing that we were going for, we wanted to make sure that the VR player really felt like a dungeon master building the maze that they were trying to build. And we went through many iterative processes to try to get that sort of feeling. And we really did use Mario Party as a sort of reference to really get that feeling for the minigames for the hallways that we built. We used a lot of other games too, like Skyrim.
That Mario Party and Skyrim.
I was like,
yeah, there you go.
Skyrim influence a little bit.
So for the Skyrim influence, you know how dark and gritty it is, going through like multiple crypts. It's like one Draugr after another. So we tried to go for that aesthetic when trying to build the mazes, because while it is still a fun party game and such, it is also a dungeon crawler. We were trying to build for the controller players. We were trying to make a scheme basically like the Skyrim dungeons, trying to get through traps, defeat enemies, and the ultimate goal is to survive at the end and get a bit of treasure.
So by the Skyrim influence here, you're talking, it sounds like specifically the modularity, the actual components, not necessarily Skyrim gameplay, but the Skyrim modularity.
There were babies in Skyrim. You didn't get to the end.
I guess I didn't. Not that end.
So one of the challenges of building something like this is having, it's not only a multiplayer game, but it's an asymmetric multiplayer game. So you're just basically designing two games that have to work together really well. What was your process behind that, and like what were some of the challenges that you ran into?
So yeah, designing kind of two games concurrently was a big challenge for us. We wanted to create a lot of interactivity between them, but that's like hard. It's hard to test all of that together. So I would say one of the biggest challenges was having like kind of design stuff independently, and then finding that weird stuff comes up when you put them together. You've got a bunch of players playing in the game at the same time.
Well, give us an example.
So one example is we have a boss fight at the end of the game where the VR player actually takes control of a boss and fights the controlled players themselves. And we have some kind of hints that pop up on the screen for them to show them what their abilities do. And we had those hints following the other players, which seemed to work fine when I was testing it on my own, because I was like, I would get in VR, look at the other player, the hint's right there, I know what to do. But when we had multiple people in there, the other player is jumping around a bunch, you can't see the hint at all.
What is the fail state or the win state for the players when they defeat this baby? Do you actually have a the baby's actually defeated, or is it like just playtime's over? Like lore-wise, what happens to this infant?
Yeah. So it's not, they're not like trying to kill the baby or anything.
That's what I was getting at. I was like,
Yeah.
that's kind of
The baby is the dungeon master, right?
Yeah. So what we're kind of going for with the baby is that their goal doesn't have to be just like stop the controller players. They can really kind of set what they want the game to be like, whether they want to make a really hard, challenging level, or they want to just try to make sure the other players have fun.
Okay, so the actual boss where you're fighting them is a little bit more of a gamified, a different kind of thing than most of the experience then?
Yes.
Okay. So you had 3 games that you're building.
Yeah, that's actually kind of true.
Okay. Yeah, well that's often the way it goes though, especially when it comes to bosses and you want to make them unique. You're generally diving into new stuff.
So one of the coolest things about being a DM is offering your players interesting choices and seeing how they react to different scenarios that they put them in. Can you describe like sort of what kind of scenarios as being the baby that you can put your other players in and what choices they have to make?
So we have multiple types of rooms. I guess mostly 3. One room is the trap rooms. They're sort of like, if you've ever played Gmod before, they have the death runs. We designed the trap rooms like that. Your goal is to get to the end without dying, basically. And second would be the enemy type rooms. We have rooms specifically for a arena, basically, where the players get brought up to an arena and they have to fight to the end against waves, basically.
So that was the more twin stick shooter kind of minigame?
And with the third, that would be basically the boss. And as you've probably seen before, it's that's where the asymmetric part really comes into play, where the baby becomes the boss character. At first, we had it where it would just be the VR player controlling and getting controller, but that wasn't really intuitive enough, so we decided to change it so they possess the boss character, which became a lot more fun in our sense. And it felt we could have more interactivity between the controller players and the boss character.
So,
1 minute left.
yeah, 1 minute left. The scope what you guys are trying to build here is pretty gigantic, and there's a lot of different sub-elements here. I imagine there's lots of things left that you still wanted to kind of go forward with. If you were to continue this on, where would you go with it?
So yeah, we've actually identified a few things that we could work on to really improve the game. One thing would just be adding some more variety to the game, because there are currently 5 types of enemies you can fight and 1 boss. And of course it would be good to have multiple bosses, more types of enemies.
Right, so just filling out the content?
Yeah, and along with that, adding different like outer environments was one thing we initially thought about doing, where each one has a theme, and each theme contributes to what objects you can place in the game.
But structure-wise, you feel like you have something that you would move on as is, and you go, I must take this and roll with it?
For the most part, yeah. There's other things like adding more interactivity between the VR player and the controller players. Because currently they can interact with the boss fight by controlling the traps in the game and just by generally placing the levels. But it would be good to make sure that there's more interaction between them so they're always aware of each other's presence.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.